It was a normal morning until it wasn't. I'd woken up early, made coffee, and settled into my chair with the newspaper. Emma was in the shower, and her phone, sitting on the counter, buzzed. Normally I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But something about the way it buzzed, just once with that subtle urgency, caught my attention. Jack hesitates before picking up the phone. His hands hover above it for a moment before he unlocks the screen. The message is short but enough to send a chill down his spine. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. He blinks, reading the message twice, as if hoping it would change. My heart sank. It wasn't my name on the screen. It wasn't my moment she was reminiscing about. I felt a lump in my throat and 1,000 questions rushing through my mind. Who was this person? What had she done last night? But more than that, why? The sound of the shower stops abruptly. Jack quickly puts the phone back on the counter, his heart pounding as he sits down, pretending to read the newspaper. Emma walks into the room moments later, her hair damp, wrapped in a towel. She greeted me like nothing had happened, with that same warm smile she always wore. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, asking how I'd slept. For a moment I almost believed her. Almost. But the message, it was there. It was real. And no matter how much I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. Jack's voice falters as he narrates, the scene shifting to him gripping his coffee mug tightly, his knuckles white. Played along. Told her I'd slept fine. Asked her the same, and she said she'd been out like a light. The way she said it, so calm, so convincing, it made me question everything. Had she always been this good at lying, or was I just seeing it now? The camera lingers on Jack's face as he watches Emma move around the kitchen, humming softly. The screen fades to black. That was the moment I knew my life was about to change. The question wasn't if she was hiding something. It was how far she'd gone to keep it hidden. I couldn't sit in that house, pretending everything was fine. Not after reading that message. I told her I had errands to run, but really I just needed to think. To breathe. To figure out what to do next. Jack pulls out his phone and stares at Emma's contact photo. His thumb hovers over her name, but instead of calling, he scrolls down and dials someone else. The screen shows the name Mike. The phone rings twice before a gruff voice answers. Mike on the phone. Hey Jack. What's up? Everything okay? Jack hesitates, his voice strained. Mike, I need your help. Something's going on with Emma. And I don't know how to handle it. Cut to Jack and Mike meeting at a small diner. They sit in a booth tucked away in the corner. Jack stirs his coffee nervously as he explains the situation. I told him everything. The message, the way she acted like nothing had happened, how it felt like I was living with a stranger. Mike listened without interrupting, but his expression grew darker with every word. Mike leans forward, his voice low but firm. You've got two choices, Jack. Confront her now or gather more information. If you're wrong, this blows up in your face. But if you're right, well, you'll want the truth on your side. Jack leans back, running a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. I don't even know where to start. How do you even prove something like this? Mike glances around before speaking in a quieter tone. There are ways. Check her phone when she's not looking. See if there are patterns, calls, texts, appointments that don't make sense. You've got to stay calm, Jack. No accusations until you're sure. Jack nods slowly, the resolve building in his eyes. All right, I'll do it. But, Mike, what if I find out it's true? What then? Mike pauses, looking his friend in the eye. Then you decide what kind of man you want to be, and what kind of life you deserve to have. The camera zooms in on Jack's face. His expression a mix of determination and dread. As I left that diner, one thing was clear. I couldn't go back to pretending. The truth was out there, and I had to find it, no matter what it cost me. I couldn't sleep. The weight of that message and everything it could mean sat heavy on my chest. I knew what Mike said was right. I needed proof. But doing this felt like crossing a line I never thought I'd have to cross in my marriage. Jack quietly gets out of bed, careful not to wake Emma. He grabs her phone from the nightstand and steps into the hallway, his hand trembling as he unlocks it. It felt wrong, like I was betraying her trust, even though I was the one searching for the betrayal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. He scrolls through her messages, finding mostly mundane conversations with friends and coworkers. Just as he's about to give up, he notices a hidden folder labeled Notes. He clicks it open, revealing a series of cryptic entries. There it was. Dates and times. Meeting locations that didn't make sense. One in particular caught my eye. Friday, 3 p.m. Same place. Don't forget the bracelet. My stomach turned. That was yesterday. He snaps a photo of the screen with his own phone and quietly puts hers back on the nightstand. Jack sits at the kitchen table, staring at the photo, his coffee untouched. Every part of me wanted to wake her up and demand an explanation. But what good would that do without knowing the full truth? I needed to see for myself. I needed to know who she was meeting and why. The camera cuts to Jack the next day, sitting in his car near a small cafe. His eyes dart back and forth between the entrance and the time on his watch. Mike had offered to come with me, but this was something I had to do alone. I parked far enough away to stay hidden but close enough to see everything. And then, just as the clock struck 3, she appeared. Emma walks into the cafe, looking around as if searching for someone. A man enters moments later, smiling at her warmly. They sit at a table by the window, leaning in close as they talk. My heart sank. It wasn't just her meeting someone. It was the way she smiled at him, the way her hand lingered on his when he reached for the bracelet on her wrist. That was when I knew. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. I wasn't ready for what came next. But ready or not, the truth was staring me in the face. The scene opens with Jack sitting in his car, staring at Emma and the man through the cafe window. His breathing is uneven, his fists clenched tightly on the steering wheel. I didn't know how long I sat there watching them. Part of me wanted to burst in, demand answers, and end this charade. But another part, it just hurt too much to move. Seeing her like that, laughing, leaning in close like she didn't have a care in the world, made everything feel so surreal. Emma hands the man a small box. He opens it, revealing a bracelet. His face lights up, and he reaches across the table to hold her hand. Jack looks away, the weight of the scene too much to bear. That box, that bracelet. I remembered seeing her wearing it just last week. She'd said it was something she bought herself, something special. But now I knew the truth. It wasn't for her. It was for him. Jack's phone buzzes on the dashboard, pulling him out of his thoughts. He picks it up, seeing a text from Mike. You good? Need backup. Jack hesitates before typing back. Not yet. I need more. He sets the phone down and exhales deeply. I couldn't just barge in without knowing the whole story. What if I'd misunderstood? What if this wasn't what it looked like? Those questions were the only thing holding me back, and the only thing keeping me in that car. The scene transitions to Jack at home that evening. Emma walks in, her cheerful demeanor intact as she sets her bag down. Jack watches her carefully, his expression unreadable. Hey honey. Long day at work. Jack forces a smile. You know how it is. She kisses him on the cheek and heads to the kitchen to start dinner. Jack stays seated, his eyes following her every move. She acted so normal, so loving. How could someone live two lives so easily? How could she come home and look me in the eye after being with someone else? Had to find out more. I needed the truth. Not just for me, but for the years we'd built together. Late that night, while Emma sleeps, Jack sits at his desk with her phone and laptop in front of him. He clicks through her email and calendar, piecing together her plans. It was all there. Hidden but not impossible to find. Lunch meetings that didn't align with her work schedule. Trips she claimed were for business. Everything pointed to one undeniable fact. She wasn't just meeting him. They had been planning this for months. Jack leans back in his chair, his hands covering his face. The camera lingers on him, the silence of the room broken only by his shaky breaths. And just like that, the person I thought I knew was gone. But if she thought I was going to let her get away with it, she was wrong. It was time for her to face the consequences. The scene opens with Jack sitting in his car again, parked outside the same cafe. It's mid-afternoon, and the atmosphere is tense. Jack's fingers drum against the steering wheel as he keeps his eyes on the entrance. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. After last night, I had all the proof I needed. The messages, the secret meetings, the bracelet. It was all there, laid out like a map of betrayal. But confronting her at home felt too controlled, too safe for her. I needed her to feel the weight of what she'd done. So today I followed her. Emma appears, walking into the cafe with the same confident stride as before. A few minutes later, the man joins her. Jack steps out of his car, his face a mask of determination. My heart was pounding, but my mind was made up. No more waiting, no more excuses. She needed to know that I knew, and he needed to see the damage they'd caused. The camera follows Jack as he walks into the cafe. The bell above the door chimes, drawing Emma's attention. Her smile fades the moment she sees him. The man glances at Jack, confused. Emma, nervously. Jack. What are you doing here? Jack's voice is calm, but there's an edge to it. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. The man shifts uncomfortably, clearly unsure of who Jack is. Emma fidgets with her bracelet, her eyes darting between the two men. The man. Is this a friend of yours, Emma? Jack laughs bitterly. A friend? No, I'm her husband. But I guess she didn't mention that, did she? The man's eyes widen and he looks at Emma, who is visibly panicking now. Jack, please. Let's not do this here. Jack cuts her off, his voice rising slightly. Why not? You didn't care about here when you planned all of this, did you? Or when you gave him my bracelet? Emma's face flushes with guilt as other patrons in the cafe begin to take notice. The man stands up, raising his hands defensively. The man. Look, I didn't know she was married. If I had. Jack points a finger at him, his voice steady but firm. You don't get a pass for this. You could have asked questions, but you didn't. You went along with it because it was easy. Emma reaches out to Jack, her voice pleading. Jack, please. Let's go somewhere private and talk about this. Jack steps back, shaking his head. Private? You lost the right to privacy when you started lying. Everyone deserves to know the truth, especially me. The camera zooms in on Emma's face, tears welling in her eyes as Jack turns and walks out of the cafe. The scene transitions to Jack sitting in his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his expression conflicted. As I drove away, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. And now, for the first time in months, I had it. The person I loved wasn't who I thought she was. And the life we'd built together. It was never what it seemed. The scene opens with Jack sitting in his living room, a suitcase half-packed beside him. The house is quiet, the only sound the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Jack stares at a framed photo of him and Emma from happier times, his expression unreadable. I spent the rest of the day in a haze. Confronting her in that cafe was supposed to bring me closure, but instead it left me with more questions. How did we get here? Was it my fault? Or was it something broken in her that I could never have fixed? The sound of the front door opening pulls Jack from his thoughts. Emma steps inside, her face pale and eyes red. She sees the suitcase and freezes. Jack. What are you doing? Jack stands, his voice calm but cold. Isn't it obvious? I'm leaving. Emma rushes toward him, tears streaming down her face. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I still love you. Jack's expression hardens as he shakes his head. A mistake. Emma, this wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't some drunken slip-up. You planned this. You lied to me every single day. How do you come back from that? Emma falls to her knees, clutching his hand desperately. I was stupid, Jack. I didn't think about what I was throwing away. Please just give me one more chance. I'll do whatever it takes. Jack pulls his hand away, his voice trembling with anger and sadness. I gave you everything, Emma. My trust, my loyalty, my heart. And you threw it all away for what? For someone who didn't even know you were married. Emma sobs, but Jack turns away, grabbing his suitcase. He pauses at the door, his back to her. I'm not sure if you're sorry for what you did or just sorry you got caught. But either way, I can't do this anymore. I deserve better than living in the shadow of your lies. Emma collapses onto the floor as Jack walks out, the door closing softly behind him. The scene transitions to Jack driving away, his expression a mix of sorrow and relief. As I left the house, I felt an ache I couldn't describe. Losing her felt like losing a part of myself. But staying would have meant losing all of me. And that I couldn't allow. The camera shows Jack pulling into a quiet motel, checking into a small room. He sits on the bed, staring out the window as the sun sets. For the first time in years I was alone. But for the first time in months I felt free. Now it was up to me to decide what came next. The scene fades to black, leaving the faint sound of the ticking clock echoing into silence. The scene opens with Jack standing on the balcony of a small apartment he's rented. The city lights twinkle in the distance as he sips a cup of coffee, a calm breeze brushing past him. The camera lingers on his face. He looks tired but at peace. It had been 3 months since I left. 3 months to process, to heal, to figure out what my life looked like without her. At first it was unbearable, the silence, the questions, the loneliness. But slowly, I started finding pieces of myself that I'd forgotten. The scene flashes to Jack at a local community center, chatting with people in a woodworking class. He smiles as he sands a piece of wood, the tension in his face noticeably lighter. I threw myself into new things, hobbies, places, people. Not to distract myself, but to rediscover who I was. For years, I'd been part of Jack and Emma. Now it was just... And that had to be enough. The camera cuts to Jack walking through a park. He pauses at a bench where an elderly man is feeding pigeons. They exchange a friendly nod as Jack sits down. He opens his phone and hesitates before scrolling to Emma's name. I'd been avoiding this moment for weeks, but something about that day made me feel ready. So I dialed her number. Emma's voice answers, tentative but familiar. Emma on the phone. Jack. Jack takes a deep breath. Yeah, it's me. I just wanted to check in. See how you're doing. There's a pause on the other end before Emma speaks, her voice trembling. I'm okay. I've been going to therapy, trying to figure out why I did what I did. I know that doesn't change anything, but... Sorry, Jack. For everything. Jack listens, his expression softening. I know you are, Emma. And I hope you keep working on yourself. Not for me, but for you. We both deserve to move on. The camera pans to Jack's face as he smiles faintly. Take care of yourself, Emma. He hangs up, slipping the phone into his pocket. The elderly man beside him chuckles softly. Elderly man. Letting go is the hardest part, isn't it? Jack nods, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Yeah. But it's also the only way forward. The scene transitions to Jack back at his apartment, hanging a new piece of art on the wall. He steps back to admire it, a serene landscape of a winding road. My story with Emma ended, but it wasn't the end of my story. Life doesn't stop for heartbreak. It keeps moving, and so do we. The final shot shows Jack walking down a bustling street, the world alive around him. He smiles as he steps into a coffee shop, the bell chiming softly. The screen fades to black as his voice echoes. What would you do if your life suddenly changed forever? Would you fight for what was lost? Or start building something new? Let me know in the comments.